I want to talk about the fantasy. You know the one. You're sitting in a meeting that should have been an email. Your manager says something that makes your left eye twitch, and for exactly 4 seconds, you imagine standing up, saying something devastatingly accurate about the entire organization, and walking out while everyone stares in stunned silence. Maybe you've done it. Maybe you've come close. Maybe you've drafted the resignation email at 11 p.m., read it back in the morning, and quietly deleted it. Here's the thing. I'm not here to tell you the fantasy is wrong. Sometimes the rage is completely justified. Sometimes the place genuinely deserves it. But the rage quit, the actual execution of it, almost never works out the way the fantasy does. And I've seen it enough times and felt the pull of it myself to want to have this conversation. Because there's another way to leave, one that doesn't cost you, one that actually sets you up for whatever comes next. And it requires strategy, not suppression. So let's talk about how to quit like you actually have a plan. Let me paint the full picture of a rage quit, not the fantasy version, the real one. You snap, or you get pushed past your limit one time too many. You quit, maybe dramatically, maybe just abruptly. And for the next 48 hours, it feels incredible, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for months. And then reality starts arriving. The reference you needed from that job? Gone. The people you worked with, some of whom you actually liked, now have a weird last memory of you. The industry you're going back into? Smaller than you thought. Your old manager's college friend is the hiring manager at the next place you apply to. And then there's the practical stuff. No negotiated exit. No extended notice that could have bought you a few more paychecks while you figured out the next move. Maybe you left mid-project, and now your professional reputation has a small but permanent dent in it. The fantasy lasts 2 days. The consequences last years. I'm not saying stay somewhere that's destroying you. I'm saying if you're going to leave, leave with intention. Because the way you exit is the first chapter of wherever you're going next. Before anything else, and I mean before you tell a single person, before you update your LinkedIn, before you start casually job hunting, you need to get ruthlessly honest with yourself about why you want to leave. Because there are 2 very different categories here. Category 1, the situation is genuinely broken. Bad leadership, toxic culture, dead-end role, pay that's insulting, something that's actively making your life worse. That's real. That's a reason to leave. Category 2, you're burned out. You had a bad month. A project blew up. Someone annoyed you, and leaving feels like relief, but the same version of you will walk into the next place and find similar problems, because some of what you're running from is actually following you. I've been in Category 2 thinking I was in Category 1. It's uncomfortable to admit. This matters strategically because it changes your entire exit plan. If the job itself is wrong, you need to find the right one before you leave, if at all possible. If it's a specific environment problem, a manager, a team dynamic, a structure, sometimes a lateral move within the company solves it without the cost of leaving. Know what you're actually solving for. Everything else depends on that. This sounds obvious. It is less commonly done than you'd think. The single biggest strategic mistake people make when quitting is leaving before they have something to go to. And I understand why. When somewhere is bad enough, the instinct is just to get out. Get out now. Figure it out later. But figure it out later almost always costs more than staying a little longer and leaving with a plan. Here's what I mean practically. When you job hunt from a position of employment, you negotiate differently. You don't take the first offer out of desperation. You have leverage because you're not bleeding. You can afford to wait for the right thing rather than the available thing. When you job hunt from unemployment, especially after a sudden exit, the desperation is invisible to you, but visible to everyone you're interviewing with. And it shows up in the offers you get. So start the search quietly. Use weekends, use lunch breaks, use early mornings. Tell nobody at your current job. Get to offer stage somewhere that actually excites you, and then begin your exit. It feels slower. It is slower. It also tends to land you somewhere significantly better than the thing you grabbed in a panic because you left without a plan. Once you know you're leaving and you have something to go to, or at minimum a solid runway, timing your exit is its own skill. A few things worth thinking about here. First, the financial calendar. Do you have a bonus coming, vesting on equity, a pay review cycle that's 3 weeks away? These are real numbers. Leaving 2 weeks before your annual bonus lands is just leaving money on the table. Know the schedule. Work with it. Second, project cycles. If you're mid-project on something visible, finishing it or at least getting it to a clean handoff point does two things. It protects your reputation, and it genuinely makes your life easier because you won't spend the next 6 months with half a conscience about leaving something in a mess. Third, your emotional state. If you're in a particularly bad week, a conflict just happened, you just had a terrible performance review, emotions are running hot, that is the worst time to formally resign. Not because your reasons aren't valid, because decisions made in emotional peaks tend to skip steps that matter. Wait until you're clear-headed. The resignation will land differently. Timing isn't weakness, it's just using the calendar the way it was meant to be used. Okay, you've decided. You have a plan. You're ready. Now how do you actually do this? First, tell your manager before you tell anyone else. Anyone, not your work best friend who you trust, not the colleague you commiserate with. Your manager first, directly, privately. I've seen people do it the other way and watch it become a whole thing. Word gets around, manager finds out secondhand. Now the exit is awkward from day one of your notice period. Keep the conversation simple. You don't owe an extensive explanation. You don't need to list grievances even if you have them. I've decided to move on to another opportunity is a complete sentence. You can elaborate if you want to, you don't have to. The resignation letter itself, keep it short and professional. It lives in your file. It can be read by people who weren't part of any of the difficult conversations you had there. It is not the place for catharsis. Save the real feedback for the exit interview. And even there, be strategic about what you say and how you say it. Your notice period is the last thing people will remember about you at that job, which means it's worth taking seriously even when every instinct says coast. Show up, be present, finish what you said you'd finish, document your work properly so whoever comes after you isn't starting from zero. I know this can feel almost insulting when the place treated you badly, but here's the reframe. This isn't for them. It's for you. It's for the version of you 3 years from now who runs into someone from this chapter of their career and gets to have a comfortable conversation instead of an awkward one. It's also genuinely useful to think about what you want to leave behind in terms of relationships. Who from this job do you actually want to stay in contact with? Your last few weeks are a natural opportunity to have those conversations, to grab coffee, to connect properly on LinkedIn, to end things on a note that leaves the door open. Some of the best professional relationships I have came from jobs that had genuinely difficult periods. The exit is part of the relationship. Handle it accordingly. This is something almost nobody thinks about until they're already in an interview and someone asks, "Why did you leave?" Your answer to that question is a piece of communication that needs to be crafted. Not fabricated, crafted. There's a difference. If the truth is, my manager was difficult and the culture was toxic, that is valid, real, and completely not what you should lead with in an interview. Not because you're hiding anything, but because talking negatively about a previous employer in an interview, even when you're justified, almost always makes an interviewer subtly nervous about what you might say about them someday. The version that works, focus on what you were moving toward, not what you were running from. I was looking for more ownership over the full project cycle. I wanted to be in an environment that moves faster. I'd taken that role as far as I could and wanted a new challenge. All of those can be completely true and also completely strategic. You're not lying, you're choosing which true things serve you best. This is your narrative. Own it. Prepare it. Practice saying it until it sounds natural instead of rehearsed. Before you pull the trigger, run through this. Do you know exactly why you're leaving? And is it the real reason or the surface reason? Have you started looking while you're still employed? Do you know what financial milestones are worth waiting for? Is your emotional state calm enough to execute this cleanly? Have you documented your work and thought about handoffs? Do you know who you want to maintain relationships with? Do you have your narrative ready for interviews? If you can check all of those boxes, you're not rage quitting, you're executing. And that version of leaving, it almost always sets you up better than the place you're leaving could have. Look, I've felt the rage. I've been in the meeting, heard the thing, and had the full body reaction of someone who is completely done. And I'm not telling you to suppress that. That feeling is data. It's telling you something real. But there's a gap between feeling it and acting on it. And what you do in that gap, whether you blow the exit or whether you use it, that gap is where your next chapter actually gets shaped. The rage quit feels like power. The strategic exit is power. One lasts a day. The other follows you forward. If you're sitting on a decision right now, if you're in that gap, I hope this helps. And if you've already been through it, drop a comment. Tell me how you handled it. I genuinely want to know. See you in the next one.